There wasn't one big moment where I realized something was off. No dramatic fight, no lipstick-stained collar cliché. It was the slow, creeping kind of change, the kind you don't even notice at first because it happens in inches, not miles. But looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Julia and I had been married for 6 years, and for the most part, our life was quiet and easy. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in a small Oregon coastal town, the kind of place where people nod when they pass you on the street and every second car is a truck. I worked as an insurance agent, a job that wasn't exciting but paid the bills and kept us stable. Julia commuted 30 minutes inland to her job in marketing at a mid-sized firm. She was ambitious, sharp, always the best-dressed person in any room she entered. We were opposites in some ways, but we fit. Or so I thought. The changes started slowly. Her phone, for example. It used to sit on the kitchen counter while we cooked dinner together, or next to her wine glass when we watched TV. But over the course of a few weeks, it was always in her hand or face down. At first, I barely noticed. Then I started to realize I hadn't seen her phone screen light up in front of me in days. If I walked into a room, she'd click it off without even looking up, like it was muscle memory. I mentioned it once, jokingly, "What? You hiding state secrets or something?" And she laughed, but it was forced tight. "Just work stuff," she said, brushing me off. Confidential campaigns. I didn't press it, but I didn't forget it either. Then she started going out more. Happy hours after work turned into late evenings. Client meetings that were vague and last minute. She'd leave dressed like she was heading to a cocktail party, not a marketing brainstorm. Tight dresses, heels I hadn't seen in years, makeup that looked like it belonged to the woman I met in college, not the one who usually preferred sweatpants and a glass of wine by 7 p.m. One night, she came home smelling like a cologne I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine, that much I knew. I asked about it, trying to sound lighthearted, but my voice cracked somewhere in the middle. She waved it off. "It's probably from my coworker, Ethan." We hugged goodbye after the meeting. You know how small conference rooms can be. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But the seed was planted. There were more little things. She started locking her laptop when she stepped away from it, something she'd never done before. Her calendar, once shared with me for practical things like vet appointments and dinner plans, was suddenly private. She stopped talking about work entirely, except in broad, untraceable terms. The intimacy changed, too. She wasn't cold. Not exactly, but it felt like she was performing affection instead of feeling it. Her kisses were quicker, her hugs looser. We hadn't had sex in weeks, and when I brought it up, she sighed and said she was just tired lately. Tired. Always tired. I started checking the clock every time she left the house. Not because I didn't trust her. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe that was part of it, but because I was desperate to find a pattern, something that would make sense of the growing pit in my stomach. And then came the email. It was a rainy Tuesday night. She had just come back from yoga. At least that's what she said. Her mat was still in the trunk, dry as a bone. She tossed her gym bag onto the floor and went straight upstairs to shower. I stayed downstairs, folding laundry and trying not to think too hard about anything. That's when I saw it. Her laptop was open on the kitchen island, screen still lit. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't snooping. But the subject line was right there, bold as hell. Initial divorce planning, property strategy. For a second, I thought it had to be spam. A mistake. Maybe it wasn't even her email. But then I saw the reply. It was definitely Julia's account. The message thread was short, but clear enough. A lawyer outlining next steps for separating property, discussing ideal timing, and tips for keeping the process smooth and non-confrontational. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me, like someone had cut the strings holding my reality together. She wasn't just unhappy, she was already planning the end. Without telling me, without even giving me a chance to fix it, I closed the laptop and sat down hard on one of the kitchen stools. My mind was buzzing, my body frozen. I could hear the shower running upstairs, could hear her humming faintly, like everything was fine. That made it worse. She came back downstairs a few minutes later, towel wrapped around her hair, wearing that old college sweatshirt I used to love. She smiled when she saw me. "Want some tea?" she asked like nothing was wrong. I nodded. I couldn't find my voice. That night, she curled up next to me in bed. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, Every word in that email burned into my brain. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that she was ready to leave me, or the possibility that I had never really known her at all. One thing was certain, I couldn't let her blindside me. If she was preparing to walk away with half our life, I wasn't going to sit there like a deer in headlights. She was planning her exit, and from that moment forward, I was planning mine. After I saw the email, everything changed, but only for me. Julia kept moving through our life like nothing was wrong, like we were still the same couple that made Sunday pancakes and binge-watched bad reality shows together. But I wasn't the same. Something had shifted in me, something cold and quiet. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That would have given her time to adjust her strategy to cover her tracks. And besides, I needed more than one email. I needed proof, not just for peace of mind, but because I had this gnawing feeling she wasn't just planning to leave. She was planning to leave smart. The first thing I did was start paying closer attention to our bank account. Nothing obvious jumped out. No giant transfers, no huge cash withdrawals, but there were small, steady dents. $40 here, $60 there. A couple hundred moved into her personal savings. It looked innocent enough if you weren't watching. But I was. I tracked every withdrawal, every line item. She was siphoning money, slowly, carefully, like she thought I wouldn't notice. I created a spreadsheet. Every transaction, every pattern. I even color-coded it. Yellow for joint spending, red for Julia-only withdrawals. That column grew fast. Next was the browser history. She wasn't good at clearing it. Maybe she thought I'd never look. I didn't even have to dig deep. A quick peek showed me enough. Apartment listings across town, mostly one-bedrooms near her office. Searches for Oregon divorce rights and how to protect assets before filing. She had been researching for weeks. There were also Yelp reviews, places I'd never heard of. A wine bar downtown, a tapas place she claimed she didn't like. I looked up the addresses, cross-referenced the dates with her girl nights or late meetings. The stories didn't line up. The more I saw, the more I realized how far she'd already gone. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't a moment of confusion. This was a quiet, calculated exit. And I had no idea how long she'd been planning it. I didn't have friends I could talk to about this. Not without tipping her off. So I just watched, documented, waited. One night, while she was in the shower again, I checked her laptop. This time, I knew what to look for. I opened her recent files. There was a folder called Work Docs buried under several layers. Inside, screenshots of our financial records, mortgage statements, photos of furniture, even a copy of our marriage license scanned in high resolution. She was building her case. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. It felt like betrayal, even though I was the one spying. But what choice did I have? She'd gone to war. She just hadn't told me yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake next to her again, wondering if she was dreaming about her new life, if the apartment she bookmarked earlier that day was going to be hers in a few weeks. I wanted to scream, shake her awake, demand to know why, but I didn't. Instead, I played along. The next morning, I made her coffee, asked about her weekend plans. She smiled, maybe too much, and said she had to work things Sunday afternoon. Might run late. I nodded. Jotted the time down in my notes. That same day, I drove by one of the apartments she'd favorited online. Sure enough, it had a leasing banner out front. I didn't see her car, but it didn't matter. She was making moves, scouting, positioning. One night, she came home late again, said she stayed behind for a team brainstorm. Her mascara was slightly smudged. Her heels were dusty, like she'd been walking a lot. When I kissed her cheek, I smelled something sharp and unfamiliar on her collar. Not perfume, cologne. I didn't say anything. I just smiled. By this point, I was sure she thought I was clueless, that I hadn't noticed the slow disappearance of trust, the cracks in our shared life. But what she didn't know, what she never expected, was that I wasn't just watching. I was preparing. I started moving small things out of the house. Nothing she'd notice, old electronics, a watch I didn't wear, extra tools from the garage. I sold them quietly, pocketing the cash. I told her I was cleaning out clutter, donating things. She barely glanced up from her phone. Next, I started looking at our joint accounts with sharper eyes. There were loopholes I hadn't thought about before, how accounts could be split, how certain assets could be transferred legally as long as they were done within reasonable limits. I met with a lawyer during my lunch break one day, telling him I was asking for a friend. He didn't ask too many questions. When I got home that night, Julia was already in bed, scrolling through Instagram. She smiled when I walked in, like we were still okay, like nothing was changing. But everything was. She thought I was the same old Adam, the mild-mannered husband with a boring job and zero sense of strategy. She had no idea the man lying next to her was quietly preparing to beat her at her own game. Once I knew the full scope of what Julia was planning, it stopped being about heartbreak and started being about strategy. I was done being the blindsided husband. I wasn't going to let her walk away with half our life while pretending to love me on the surface. She was making tactical moves, so I made mine. The first thing I did was sell the spare car, an old Subaru Forester we barely used anymore. We'd told ourselves it was for camping trips that never happened. I listed it privately, sold it within a week, and moved the money into a personal savings account she didn't have access to. Nothing shady, just protective. I kept the receipt, logged the mileage. If she ever tried to claim it was a shared asset I hid, I had the paperwork to prove otherwise. Next came the electronics, our second TV, the old sound system in the garage, even the espresso machine she never figured out how to use. I sold it all off slowly, piece by piece, over the course of a few weeks. Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist. I always said I was decluttering. Julia barely noticed. She was too busy texting someone with her phone tilted away from me. She thought I was nesting. Really, I was cashing out. Furniture was next. Not the obvious pieces, not the couch or our bed, just smaller things. That antique armchair her aunt gave us, gone. The glass-top side table she never liked anyway, sold. I boxed up our wedding china, never used, barely touched, and moved it to a storage unit under my name. $10 a month, and completely off her radar. By the time she started packing emotionally, I'd already started packing financially. I wasn't trying to ruin her. I wasn't trying to take everything. But I wasn't going to let her stage an ambush and play innocent while I stood there, holding my own checkbook like an idiot. I spoke with my lawyer again. This time I wasn't vague. I laid it all out. The email, the browser history, the bank withdrawals, the apartment searches. He didn't even blink. "You're smart to move early," he said. "Most people don't figure it out until they're halfway through mediation." I nodded. I don't want to be most people. We discussed timelines, filings, even contingencies, like if she filed first and tried to freeze our joint assets. I made sure I had the legal ground to stand on. Every item I sold was documented. Every transfer was within allowable limits. I wasn't hiding money. I was reclaiming mine. Meanwhile, Julia kept up the performance. She smiled more, laughed at my jokes like she used to, cooked dinner on weeknights, stuff she hadn't done in months. At one point, she even suggested we take a weekend trip to Cannon Beach just to reconnect. It was insulting. I said yes. We didn't go, of course. She canceled the night before, claiming a work emergency. I didn't press. I never did. But I noted the date and checked our account the next morning. Sure enough, another $300 withdrawal labeled as ATM, Pacific View. That wasn't near her office. It was near the district with all the real estate offices. And that was when I knew she'd finally found a place. I smiled to myself. Perfect. Let her think she's winning. Let her make her calls, do her tours, stage her quiet escape. Because what she didn't know was that while she was imagining a clean break, I was building the counterpunch. By now, I had pulled most of my paychecks into a new checking account with a different bank, one that didn't send paper mail. I still left enough in the joint account to cover groceries, the mortgage, and the occasional date night she insisted on planning, to keep up the illusion. But anything extra, it went directly to me. I started using cash more often, small bills, easy to explain. If she checked receipts, they'd all look normal. Lunches, gas, a new battery for my car. But those cashbacks added up. One weekend while she was out meeting a friend for coffee, I walked through the house like it was a crime scene. I took inventory. What would she try to take? What would she claim was hers? And more importantly, what could I live without? Anything we bought together, I took photos of, logged receipts, and backed them up to a private drive. The TV in the bedroom? My card. The washer and dryer? My side of the account. Even the damn bookshelf we built together from IKEA. I had the receipt to prove I paid. It was tedious. It was draining. But it gave me peace. Because I knew something she didn't. Once someone starts planning your future without you, they stop seeing you as part of it. She had emotionally checked out months ago. She just hadn't left physically. That was fine. Let her delay. Let her keep texting whoever she thought was a better version of me. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to be ready. When the time came, and she finally worked up the nerve to tell me, we need to talk, I'd already be miles ahead. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't cry. I'd just open a folder, show her the numbers, and let her know. She planned her escape, but I planned mine better. It happened on a Tuesday, one of those gray, drizzly Oregon afternoons where the sky never really brightens. Julia came home early from work, which was unusual in itself, and she didn't bother putting on the usual act. No hug, no forced smile, just a deep breath and the words I'd been waiting weeks to hear. "Adam," she said, standing by the kitchen counter like she was about to deliver a weather report. "We need to talk." I looked up from the newspaper I wasn't reading, gave her the faintest nod. "Yeah," I said, "we probably do." She sat across from me and launched into a speech that I'm sure she'd rehearsed in the mirror at least a dozen times. Something about how we'd grown apart, how she hadn't been happy for a while, how she needed to find herself again. Classic script, neatly packaged. She told me she'd spoken to a lawyer, said it as gently as she could, like it was supposed to soften the blow. I kept my face blank, just listened, let her feel in control. And then she said, with perfect calmness, "I want this to be as fair and amicable as possible. I think we should split everything 50-50. I've even made a list of the things we can divide. Furniture, the accounts, the house." That's when I stood up and walked into the other room. I came back with a folder, nothing fancy, just a plain manila one, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked, eyebrows knitting together. "Everything you're not getting," I said, sitting back down. She opened it. Her face shifted almost instantly. The color drained as she flipped through the documents. Receipts for asset sales. Bank statements showing money moved, legally, cleanly, and all traceable to me. Lists of items I'd already offloaded or protected. Notes from my lawyer outlining what she was entitled to and what she wasn't. She looked up at me, stunned. You've been preparing for this?" I nodded once. "Ever since I saw the email to your divorce lawyer." Her mouth dropped open. She stammered, trying to find her footing. "You read my email?" "You left your laptop open," I said flatly. "I wasn't looking for anything. But once I saw it, I decided to do what you were doing. Make a plan." She didn't say anything at first. Just sat there, staring at the paperwork like it had betrayed her. Eventually, she whispered, "You liquidated our assets." "I liquidated my assets," I corrected. "All legally. Everything documented. I made sure of it." She blinked, stunned silent. Then came the shift, the emotional angle. The tears. The wide, wounded eyes. "I didn't want to be like this, Adam," she said, voice cracking. "I thought we could do this peacefully." "This is peaceful," I said. "No lawyers. No yelling. Just facts." That was the last real conversation we had. Her lawyer called me the next day. Tried to question the sales, the transfers. I calmly forwarded all the documentation. Receipts, paper trails, logs. My own lawyer chimed in with a politely worded summary. There was nothing illegal, nothing hidden. Julia had simply underestimated me. The call stopped after that. Julia tried for a while. Emails, long texts, even a voicemail where she cried about how fast it was all happening. I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? She made her move thinking I was blind. She wasn't prepared for me to be awake the whole time. Within a month, the divorce was finalized. She got what was legally hers, which turned out to be not much. The apartment she was counting on slipped out of reach when she realized she didn't have the down payment she thought she would. Turns out draining a joint account only works when the other person isn't paying attention. Mutual friends told me she moved into a studio in the city. She stopped posting on Instagram for a while. I didn't check often, but when I did, it was always something carefully curated. Selfies with vague captions like new beginnings and growth. All staged. All hollow. Me? I was good. Better than good. I kept the house. Started replacing the furniture I'd sold, but with stuff that felt more like me this time. I updated my office, painted the walls, even started making weekend trips, something we always said we'd do, but never actually did. There was a peace to the silence. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly guessing what was going on in my own home. No more turning corners, wondering if the phone would be hidden, if the smile was real, if the night out was actually a night in someone else's life. One evening, months after the dust had settled, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Julia. She wrote about how things hadn't turned out the way she thought they would. Said she missed the life we had, that she realized too late what she'd given up. She didn't ask to come back. Not directly, but the implication was clear. I didn't reply. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and went back to my evening. Music playing, steak on the grill, a drink in my hand. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't gloating. It was just freedom, and she'd never see it coming.